Capturing an image of the sun or moon rising or setting over a mountain where the sun or moon is aligned just perfectly with the mountain doesn't require trial and error to get it just right. You can actually figure out the time and date of when that composition would be possible in about 5 minutes using PhotoPills, and today I'm going to show you how, so stay tuned. Hey there, photographers, Brenda Petrella here, and welcome to another episode of PhotoPills Friday, where we unlock the power of the PhotoPills app and help you learn it without all the confusion. In last week's episode, we learned that if your shooting location is much higher in altitude than your subject at the horizon, then the times of sunrise, sunset, moonrise, and moonset will be different than if you were at the same altitude or elevation as your subject. But what if you were lower in elevation than your subject? For instance, if your subject was a mountain peak that was much higher in elevation than your shooting location, what time would the sun or moon be visible to you from behind the mountain? As an example, I'm going to plan an image of the sun rising above one of my favorite mountains called Lafayette Mountain. And the process is similar if you want to plan a sunrise or moonrise or moonset image as well, so just keep that in mind. Now, Lafayette is in Franconia Notch and includes an incredible hike called the Franconia Ridge Loop Trail. And just west of Lafayette Mountain is Cannon Mountain, which is also a ski area. And the top of Cannon is accessible by either hiking up or an aerial tramway. The image I have in mind is to photograph the sun rising above Lafayette Mountain from the observation tower on Cannon Mountain. And Cannon Mountain is at an altitude of just over 4,000 feet, and Lafayette is at a higher elevation of around 5,200 feet. So even though I'll be on top of a mountain, my subject will be even higher than me in this scenario, and the view of the actual horizon will be obscured by all the mountains. If you've been following along with the PhotoPills Friday episodes, you know that I like to use Google Earth as part of the planning process, especially if it's at a location that I'm not too familiar with. So I have the Cannon Mountain Observation Tower here in Google Earth. And now I am just going to click on 3D View and hold down the Shift key as I scroll my mouse around to get a sense for what the view to the east looks like from the top of Cannon Mountain. And here I can see Franconia Ridge and the tallest peak on the ridge trail, which is Lafayette Mountain. Ideally, I would like to photograph the sun coming up right over the summit of Lafayette. And I can even zoom in a little bit more to get a better sense of the perspective that I'll have from this shooting location. Okay, so it looks like this has good potential. So now let's hop into PhotoPills and start planning the image. In the planner, I'm going to click on Load at the bottom of the screen, and then in the address bar, I'm just going to type in Franconia, which is the nearest town to the mountains. And now my red pin has been relocated to the town of Franconia, and if I zoom out, I can now see Lafayette and Cannon Mountains on my map. Now, if you don't have the same map view as I do right now, all you have to do is go into Map Settings, and under the map type, click on Hybrid. And I'm using a hybrid view so that I can see both the satellite view and the labels on the map, which help me find the mountains more easily. Okay, so the next step is to put my red pin on the top of Cannon Mountain. So I'm just going to zoom in here until I see the observation tower, which is right there. And then I'm just going to tap and hold my finger on the screen until the red pin is located on the observation tower. Now I can zoom back out so that I see Lafayette Mountain again. I'm now going to activate the black pin because I'm going to use the relationship between the red and black pins to tell me what azimuth and elevation of the sun I'll need in order for me to capture the image I have in mind. And if you haven't yet mastered the red and black pins, then I encourage you to check out episode 16, where I go into all of the details of how to correctly use these two pins in your planning. So to activate the black pin, you just have to go to the second panel of the top bar, which is the pin-to-pin geodetic info panel. And right now my panel is off. So all I have to do to turn it on is to tap on the icon in the upper left corner of the map. And now the black pin has been put on my map and a white dotted line connects the red and black pins. So now I'm just going to move the black pin over to Mount Lafayette and then zoom in on the map to get the black pin onto the summit of the mountain, which is right around here. Okay, so now I'm going to zoom back out so that I can see both pins again. And the next thing to do is to make sure that the sun map layer is turned on in the planner. And the easiest way to do this is to just go into the map settings and here click on the eyeball next to the sun map layer. Now, if you have other map layers turned on, you can just turn them off by clicking on that little eyeball. And I like to keep all the layers off that I don't need, so I'm just turning the map layer on for the sun right now. And then I'm just clicking done to return to the planner. Okay, so now with the sun map layer on, we can see the azimuth lines of the sun map layer. Now, if you look at the top panel, you can see that the azimuth between the red and black pins is 84.2 degrees. This is basically the orientation that the red and black pins have relative to north. So this means that I need to find the time and date when the sun will also be rising at this azimuth relative to my red pin's location. So ideally, the red pin, the black pin, and the sun will form a straight line to get the composition that I would like to capture. So the next thing I need to figure out is how high in the sky the sun needs to be so that it's just cresting over the mountain, which will obviously be later than what sunrise is at sea level because Lafayette Mountain will block the sun until the sun rises high enough for me to be able to see it above Lafayette from my perspective on the top of Cannon Mountain. One way to do this is to first look at the altitude difference between the two pins. And the top info panel tells us that the altitude difference is 4.62 degrees in elevation. So, in order for me to see the sun cresting over the mountain, the sun's elevation also needs to be at 4.62 degrees relative to the black pin. So all this information tells us that we need to find a date and time when the sun will be at an azimuth of 84.2 degrees and at an elevation of 4.62 degrees. And to do that, we can use the find function in PhotoPills, which is found on the bottom left-hand corner of the planner. So click on find, and if you are an iOS user, then you have a similar view as I do. However, if you're an Android user, you likely only have two options, one for the sun and one for the moon. And that is because when PhotoPills came out with the Android version, they got rid of some of the features that were in iOS that people just didn't find very helpful. But the one that we're going to use in this example is sun at azimuth and elevation. So click on that. Here at the top, we can see the date range for the search. Now, when you're searching for a sun image, a date range of 1 year should be sufficient to find whether the sun will be at the azimuth and elevation you need. And if you're looking for a moon image, then I would recommend doing a little bit longer search, more like 2 years or longer, to be able to find the moon and the phase of the moon that you would like for the composition you have in mind. So I'm just going to click on the date range. And for my start date, I'm just going to say today. And for my end date, I'm just going to put in from 1 year from now and click done. Now, under the date range of the top section there, you see two options, one for the azimuth and one for the elevation. And a yellow line highlights whichever box is able to be edited. So, for instance, right now, the yellow line is under azimuth, and so I can edit that if I choose. And if I click on the elevation box, the yellow line moves over there. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to azimuth for a moment. Now, because we first set our red and black pins before using the find tool, the azimuth of the sun that we need for our image is already entered here, so 84.2 degrees. So this tool basically reads the information from the red and black pins in the planner and sticks it here, and that's one advantage of first placing the red and black pins in the planner. However, you could use the find tool without having first placed the black pin, and it just involves manually inputting your desired azimuth or elevation. And we can do that by clicking on the 1, 2, 3 numeric tab down below and entering the numbers in here. Before we move on, let me just quickly explain what we're looking at here. When we select the azimuth box at the top, we get a map view in the middle, which contains the red pin where we put it on our shooting location, and it also contains a yellow pin. Now, if we were planning a moon image, this second pin would appear blue. The yellow and blue pins in this view are tied to the black pin of the planner. So wherever we had put the black pin previously is where you would now find this yellow or blue pin in this map view. Now, if you hadn't set the black pin as we did, then you would be able to move the yellow pin around wherever you would like. But we are going to use the black pin again later in this process, so I find it a lot easier and quicker to just start with the black pin and move on from there. So I'm just going to put the yellow pin back where it was. If we tap on the yellow pin, a little white box pops up that tells us the altitude and relative elevation difference between the red and yellow pins, and it should be the same information we got with the black pin unless we've moved the yellow pin around. And now we can verify whether the information in the white box matches the information in the top panels for the azimuth and elevation difference. And if they don't match, you can manually input the numbers from the white box into the azimuth and elevation areas at the top. And right now, mine do match, so we don't need to change anything right now. Now, if we click on the elevation box at the top, you now see a graphic that shows the red pin, the yellow pin, and a larger yellow circle, which represents the sun. And if you wanted to, you could set the elevation of the sun by dragging the sun up and down on this graphic, and the numbers at the top would change. Or you could manually set it by, again, clicking on numeric down below and inputting the elevation difference there. But again, if they already match, then you don't need to do this step. Now, if you'd like to refine your search of the dates and times a bit, you could change the error of either the azimuth or elevation, which is basically how much wiggle room around the ideal azimuth and elevation you're willing to tolerate in order to find dates and times when the sun or moon would be where you want it to be for your image. And if we go back to the azimuth view and zoom in on the map, you now see a yellow shaded area around the yellow pin, and this indicates the error range of the azimuths that will be included in the search. So if you used a larger error range than what we have here, you would see a thicker shaded area, for example. Now I'm using an azimuth error of plus or minus 0.75 degrees and an elevation error of plus or minus 0.25 degrees, and these numbers are pretty small, so I should only see a handful of dates returned on the search. I would also just like to quickly point out that on the map here you see a sort of triangular shaded area at the top of the map, and that is the azimuth range that the sun will never appear. So you always want the sun to be appearing in the non-shaded areas when you're doing your planning. Okay, so the next step is to just click on the magnifying glass search button at the top right corner of the screen. And now PhotoPills has listed for us all of the potential dates and times when the sun will be at our chosen azimuth and elevation within the wiggle room range that we selected over the next year. And the table is organized according to date, azimuth, and elevation, and you can sort any of these parameters by clicking on the title. So right now it's sorted by date. If I click on azimuth, it's sorted by azimuth. If I click on elevation, it gets sorted by elevation, and you'll see this little arrowhead that indicates that it's being sorted by that parameter. Our search parameters are displayed at the top in yellow text so that we can easily remember them and compare them to the search results in the table. So we don't have a search result that gives us a perfect elevation and azimuth combination, but some pretty close ones. So I need to look through the options to find the one that would be the best fit. And you can always go back and change the error range to open up your options if you need to. So you'll notice that some of these options are showing an elevation of less than my ideal elevation difference of 4.62 degrees. But if I choose one that is less than 4.62 degrees, then the sun will be blocked by the mountain from my viewing location. So let's just see if that's true. And so to test this, I will just click on April 7th, where my elevation difference is at 4.35 degrees. So that now loads it into the planner. And if I zoom in, you can now see that the sun's azimuth line is aligned with the white dotted line of the red and black pins. And you can also see that the yellow azimuth line of the sun is now dashed. And as I explained in episode 17, when the sun or moon's azimuth line are dashed, that indicates that the sun or moon will be blocked by the terrain where the black pin is from the red pin's perspective. So let's just try a different option from the table. So we're just going to click on Find again. And now let's click on April 8th, which we have an azimuth of 84 degrees and an elevation of 4.65 degrees. Now that date and time has been loaded into the planner, and you can see that the yellow azimuth line of the sun is no longer dashed, which makes sense since the relative elevation of the sun on this date at this time is slightly greater than the elevation difference between the red and black pins. So if you want to save your plan at this stage, just click on Save at the bottom, Plan, New Plan, give the plan a name, and click Save. So now that you know about the Find tool and the different ways to use it, let me just summarize for you the quick step-by-step process for planning a sun or moon image in just a few simple steps. So 1, set the red and black pin in the planner. 2, turn on the map layer for the sun or moon in the map settings. 3, click on the Find tool. 4, click on the sun at azimuth and elevation or moon at azimuth and elevation options. 5, set your desired date range and change the error range of the azimuth and elevation if you'd like. 6, click on the search icon at the top. 7, select the date that best fits your parameters and load it into the planner. And that's it. Pretty easy peasy, right? Now, many of the episodes of PhotoPills Friday so far have focused on deciphering the various icons and tools within the planner and how to use them to plan sun, moon, or meteor shower images. But we have yet to talk about the tools inside the planner that will help you plan a Milky Way image. And so that is what we will tackle in next week's PhotoPills Friday. So if you have any questions about Milky Way planning, drop them in the comments below and I will try to address them in that episode. So stay tuned, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.